Hey everybody, Chad Hyams here with the Achieve Your Apex podcast. And we're diving into chapter 11, which is know what drives you. No, I'm not talking about in the car. Nita likes to have me drive around and all that stuff. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about in the heart. I'm talking about in the head. I'm talking about the things that drive you. Now, some of you are type A personality and you are drivers. Some of you are not type A personalities. That doesn't mean you don't have drive. And we're going to get into this series of chapter 11 here where we're really going to dive into our why. Now, you've heard the term before, right? The big why, that you have to have this thing. And too many people make the mistake of thinking that a big why means the rest of their lives. Like, this is the thing that I have to figure out today that is going to drive me forever. That is the biggest challenge people have with it. The big why is temporary. The big why is something that matters now. And as soon as it's accomplished, done. We find another one. We start over. We get to the next level, whatever that is. You do not need to sit down and come up with something that is going to define your whole life today. What you do need, though, is you need to have a why, because we have to know that we have a strong, specific, and emotionally impactful, let me say those two words again, emotionally impactful why to drive our goals. The way I always say this to people is if it doesn't make you cry, it's not a big enough why. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean that the why should be so powerful, so big, so massive, and matter so much to you that if you failed to achieve it, you'd cry. That you would let down yourself and or whomever you were setting this goal for or being inspired by, that it would make you cry. It would break your heart not to make it happen. Because if it's a goal that you just want to have, you'll justify when you don't get there. It's got to make you cry that you can't do it. And I'll share my story a little bit about that in an upcoming episode. I also want you to understand that having a powerful why will make your pursuit of a goal easier. It's like your car will go faster to get there because you understand what's pulling you towards it as much as you having to go towards it. It will be attracting you to it because it matters. Okay? We have to remember that there's a difference between surface level and deeper significant driving forces. Saying, I want to be a success, that's really surface level stuff. Saying, I want to be debt free, now we get really specific. We know what. My question would be, why does being debt free matter? And don't just give me the logical answer because then I have more money to do. No, why does it matter? Was there somebody in your world who had to file bankruptcy and it destroyed them? Was there somebody in your world who had their home repossessed? Do you remember when you were younger that happened to you and your family and you're never going to let it happen? Now you've got a why that is emotionally attached to where you're going and what you're focusing on. Think about these things. I want you to understand there are people who will do intense challenges. And why will they do them? For their family, maybe for their health. Sometimes maybe it's just for a legacy. Let me share a few examples that you've probably heard of. In the book, Achieve Your Apex, I tell the story, if you didn't know it, of Terry Fox. Now, I had the pleasure of growing up in Toronto, Canada, and I remember the Terry Fox run. Terry was a Canadian athlete who attempted to run coast to coast of Canada after losing his leg to cancer. He was driven by the goal to raise awareness and raise funds for cancer research. And this was back in the day when cancer is how we talked about it, right? Or we just called it the C word, right? I know I'm whispering, but I know you hear me. That's how we talked about it back then. It wasn't as open and shared now as it was, okay? Terry had deeply personal reasons for attempting to have the research happen. and it left a legacy because of it. That was a why that motivated that man to run across country. You can read more about his story or Google away. Maybe you've watched the movie recently on Diana Nyad, right, who swam from Cuba to Florida. I don't want to do a lap in my pool. She went from Cuba to Florida at the age of 64 because she was so driven by the desire to overcome her personal limits and prove that you're never too old to chase your dreams. I like that. Hashtag age defying. Start following me on Facebook for more on that topic. And then maybe you know Bethany Hamilton, right? She was the surfer who lost her arm to a shark attack, right? And returned to competitive surfing. Why? Because she was so motivated by her love for the sport, it would have made her cry to never surf again. And on top of it, she wanted to impact others who were facing adversity at that time. Folks, I want you to understand the power of this why. So it's time to identify yours, right? It's time to make sure yours aligns. It's time to make sure you're ready to have a why that truly matters. So let's talk about this and let's come up with some ways for you to identify what truly will motivate you deep. One, go reflect on your core values. If family is truly a core value to you, then maybe your why is providing a better life for your loved ones or being a role model to your children for some reason. Don't just say my family. Say to be a better role model to my kids because I never had one in my life. Or say to provide a debt-free life for my family, to provide experiences for them because I had to forfeit that in my life due to the upraise. Whatever it might be. Okay, write down right now, pause after you hear what I'm going to tell you and go write down 3 to 5 your core values. What are truly those values that matter to you? And then for each one, think about a goal that aligns with it and say, why does this goal matter to me that it aligns with my core value? Ask yourself a few times and tell me more about that, or why, and see how deep you can get until you get to a point where you tear up. Look at some of your past examples. Reflect on a time you did something really well. What motivated you to get to that finish line? Think about the time when you felt short. What was missing in your world? Okay? So break down what's motivated you in the past, or who has motivated you to succeed in the past, and how you felt when you achieved it. Then apply this to the new goal you're working on. Think about the ideal future. All right, imagine where are we 5 years from now? We've all heard the question before. Our goals should not be that far away. Yet, if we can think what life would be like if we've created this, now we can start to set those goals right in front of us along the way. And then identify what makes you emotional. What tears you up other than like a really awesome commercial on TV? And we all have that one that gets to us. Yet there's a reason it gets to you. Maybe there is a cause. Maybe there is a person or a role in your life that makes you really emotional, positively or negatively. Okay? Because your why might be tied to that emotional trigger. Pay attention to those things as they show up. Now, we'll talk about goal setting. We've talked about it. We'll talk about it again. Remember, short-term goal setting is going to get us to where we need, yet we need the why to get us from goal to goal to goal. And it doesn't need to be any bigger than the next goal in front of us. Keep that in mind and stay tuned for more about your why in upcoming episodes. Until then, keep climbing.